Geek Out! Happy birthday to us. Oh, shit.
Yeah, well, this has been another, hey,
It's over.
That's all you get. No.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good night, Eric Bana. So welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And, this is our 150th episode.
Not necessarily a birthday,
No,
but
has nothing to do with birthdays, actually.
Yet.
but I'm keeping that song in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just the last half.
Yeah,
It was like 5
It
minutes
drags.
long.
It drags a bit.
it drags.
You really hold those notes.
Yeah.
You're kind of going for like a Randy Newman thing there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Happy birthday.
Don't make me start.
My favorite Randy Newman song? Short People. Because it's about how short people ain't got no reason to live. It's satirical, just so people don't.
And you're a tall man.
Yeah, I am a tall
He
man.
is a
We'll
tall
lead with
man.
that. We'll lead with
Yeah.
that. You're a tall man.
I always was the lead of the line in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he's middle-ish. Anyway, still, but this is our 150th episode, and we've got the first person to really, is she our MVP? She might be our MVP.
Yeah. Like if we gave out a Lifetime Achievement Award, it'd be called the Alex Campi Award.
Yes, because this is her first.
Colin Firth.
Colin
Firth's on
This
the
is
show.
her, Colin Firth.
This is this is her fourth appearance on the show, and she's here with Tony Parker. They're here to talk about their Image Comics series Mayday. So let's let them talk about it. And coming back on the show, we have Alex DeCampi and Tony Parker. They're here to talk the first volume of Mayday, part of the Codename Felix series, the first part of the Codename Felix series, out in comic book stores everywhere and on Comixology on Wednesday, May 24th. This is actually Alex's fourth time coming on the show. She came on to talk No Mercy. She came on to do Semi-Auto Magic back when that Kickstarter was going. And the first issue of Mayday. And so you are our first four-peat.
Woo!
So, welcome back. So I guess let's just jump right in. One of the things, speaking of all the books that you've done and plugged on the show, one of the things I really love about your stories is the general pace. It kind of reminds me of, say, like Death Note or any number of Japanese manga, in which case it's like twist, and just when you think you're going to resolve that twist, it's like twist. Whoop, is that a dog?
That's a dog.
Okay.
We have, just so listeners know, I've got my one of my dogs, Ian, on the bed, and he will occasionally comment.
He'll chime in.
He's a 3-year-old, 40-pound pit mix. Who's
Ian just doesn't like how long-winded Sam.
Most people don't. But where was I? Oh, right, the pace. Yeah. Speaking of pace, I love how you kind of have a twist, and just when things seem they're going to resolve themselves, you see that in No Mercy, you see that in Semi-Auto Magic, you see that here in Mayday, which goes true to its name off the rails very quickly. What kind of, what were you trying to, were those influences when you were establishing your storytelling pacing?
I mean, I always say that Naoki Urasawa is one of my biggest influences in terms of the way he tells stories. In terms of visual pacing, it's something very much like Park Chan-wook, especially his earlier films. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is my absolute favorite of his, where like you get these long kind of, and Urasawa does this as well, these long kind of very intimate either shots or sequences where you really are getting to know the characters and giving space and time for cutaways and just allowing things to happen. And then when the violence does happen, it happens very quickly. And because you have these quiet moments where you're getting to know the characters, whether they're the main characters or whether they're side characters, when the violence does happen, you care about what happens to them. And it feels much more real than if, in some books where the violence happens, and like, hurrah, its body's being thrown all over the place after being run over by a truck, and oh look, his brain exploded. But like, you kind of don't care. So I mean, you're very right in that my scripting is really devoted to a lot of the more grown up manga out there, along with several major action film directors.
You had mentioned the violence, and the thing about Mayday is the violence isn't glamorized, and I feel like in a lot of espionage fiction, thank you, James Bond, a lot of violence is not portrayed as having, horrific consequence. How do you script and how do you visualize something that's kind of that violent, that chaos that walks hand in hand with violence?
On the scripting side, one of the ways we accomplished it was, all of Mayday is an approach to espionage stories that's very different, because I feel like espionage stories fell into this rut that happened with the James Bond films and are really continuing even with like the new releases like Atomic Blonde, which looks like a very stylish film that has absolutely nothing to say, where it's these Western spies who are very much children of privilege and have all the tech and all the guns and all these cool tricks fighting kind of people we don't care about who are trying to take over the world or do something awful, and everybody's in suits and it's all very chic and like a sports car is just a phone call away. I mean, I wish, trust me, Fast and the Furious is one of my favorite film franchises, and in F8 when Roman's Lamborghini sank, it was like that was the first time I cried in film in 2017.
I feel you.
But what we did in Mayday was we flipped the script and gave you two young people in their mid-20s who are Soviet operatives in a country they don't really understand. One of them understands it much less well than the other one. And they're up against CIA and FBI operatives and case officers, some of whom you will like and some of whom you will not like. And the kids are in hoodies because they're not in actual hoodies because people didn't wear hoodies in 1971, but they're in the equivalent of hoodies. Like, nobody has crazy gadgets and SWAT teams a phone call away. It's all very, very gritty. And so, the people you're seeing shot are the good guys sometimes. And you never really see that. Like, somebody gets damseled in James Bond, like, the worst job in the world other than being Bob Dylan's girlfriend, because he'll write a terrible song about you and how awful you are, is being James Bond's girlfriend, because you're going to die. I mean, it must suck to be James Bond, because, like, every time you shag someone decent, they die. It's only the really annoying ones that don't die.
That's fair. That's fair.
Imagine if all your worst, most annoying ex-girlfriends were the only ones that ever, like, stayed around.
I'll do apologies to Britt Eklund.
Yeah. So, the way the story is structured, we're not doing anything radically different. We're just kind of going like a half step to the left, but in an industry which, in a genre which has surprisingly little innovation other than like, we'll make James Bond a chick or something like that, to say, we're going to explore the line between where these people are spies and where they're terrorists, essentially, and see how far we can see how far we can take you until you stop rooting for these characters, makes it a much more it makes it much more of a high wire act, both for the creative team and for the reader. And that's very much what I was trying to achieve. I mean, I first saw this I remember seeing Ken Loach's The Wind That Shakes the Barley the year it opened at Cannes. And it was an amazing film because it was about the IRA. And there's a certain point in that film where, like, you're rooting for the characters and they're fighting the good fight. And, I'm part Irish, so, go Irish independence. And then there becomes a certain point where you can know, like, you just stop being able to justify what these characters are doing. And it was a very deliberate choice on Ken Loach's part, and it was brilliant. And I'd never really seen anyone do that before. Have the guts to take the heroes and then just keep pushing them that little bit further and deliberately make you go, oh, they are actually terrorists now.
Kind of the idea of having your protagonists who, and you said as much, having you care for them, but then having to, juxtapose that against them doing almost unforgivable things.
Yes, which they're doing. They're not doing them for fun or for ideology. They're doing them because that's the only way they can survive.
Tony, on that note, how do you kind of capture that kind of chaos and those kind of there are some very morally gray areas that and again chaotic violence that happens in this book. How do you, going off Alex's scripts, how do you kind of bring that to life visually?
Well, I try to keep it really grounded, because that's like she was talking about. Sometimes if you have over the top violence, it loses all impact. It's the what I call the Michael Bay explosion. It's, oh, there's another one. There's another one. It doesn't matter. But if you have an explosion in a Wes Anderson film, all of a sudden that has a purpose. So anytime there's an action or violence here within what we did, I try to keep almost all as many reasonable laws of physics intact as possible, where it's not that extreme over the top like James Bond, where I love the Bond films. They're fun popcorn for me, especially the more recent ones. But they break the laws of physics on a regular basis. And if people get beat up or knocked down, whatever, there's no real beyond dusting yourself off. There's no impact. With this, every time a car rounds a corner, it might take out like a pedestrian or take out another vehicle. There's going to be damage done to that vehicle. Anytime there is a gunshot, these things do damage. There's a reason why they're such a horrible thing. It's because a bullet goes through you, there's blood, there's splatter, there's tissue everywhere. So I wanted to make sure within this that when there was those cases of chaos and violence, that everything was off the rails with that, but it was still grounded within that reality. Otherwise, if we do it or at least me for visually, if I'd done it as a over-the-top, sequence with it where just crazy violence, it would take it out of the reality of the beauty that Alex gave with the script, where all these characters are really grounded, all the settings are grounded and real, all the locations, everything, these are real events. I put something with a 2016 Bond action sequence in there, it's going to take the reader out. And that's the very last thing I want to do with this, where I want to show, I don't want to remove, I want to keep them immersed within that world. I want to keep them there. So by trying to keep it where hits do damage, punches do damage, bullets do a whole lot of damage. Cars, when they tumble around, there's structural damage to the frame. I wanted to make sure to keep the integrity of all that so that with the reader, when they're there, they stay there. Nothing brings them out.
Yeah, you hear the crashes and the gunshots, and I mean, Tony and I worked really hard on choreographing a lot of these scenes, and one of the reasons Tony is brilliant is he can do the body language of someone going from uninjured to injured and exhausted very, very convincingly. And we kept the scenes very, very minimal in terms of how far they stretched. I mean, one of my all-time favorite things I've done with a creative team is the shootout we had in issue 2, which is essentially like the entire issue is a shootout in a gas station. That's all that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was.
And it ends with the end, But it's tense the whole way through. It's not just like with a lesser line artist and color artist. It could have flagged, but I think that whole scene, like you never know where it's going to go. You don't know who's going to survive.
Yeah, and I try to really keep it as a Sam Peckinpah Wild Bunch type thing, where there is violence, but again, there are physics to it. Where there's people fall, they fall hard. It's not a little thud. There's rolling. There's potentially dislocation of a shoulder. There are things that occur with it. So anytime there is that violence, I really try to keep it grounded with that, and really give it that extra early 70s feel as well, because that's much of what the media was or the entertainment was for that time as well.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love the Sam Peckinpah reference because we love Sam Peckinpah. But two, and I mean this as I mean this as like a compliment. Like reading that issue, and especially that shootout, like I was like exhausted reading that issue because, like you were saying, it doesn't
puppy.
Because No, but I mean, I was. I mean, because like you're saying, you don't know, and something simple like you're talking about with reality and the way things work. Like, I think people forget that bullets don't always hit their target. There's trajectories. It's not this magic thing until you fire a gun or
and
you
it's
see
not bloodless either.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was one of my
shooting's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of my favorite parts of the book. I mean, the shootout was just fantastic. The way it was laid out and just everything was fantastic.
See, I love how Alex had an unexpected consequence for bullets. I'm not going to give away for the reader, but there's a wonderful sequence there towards the end of number 2. Thank you. Someone agrees. Where there is that wonderful sequence there. They're like, oh, even going through the script, I'm like, oh, golly. It makes sense, but I didn't expect it coming because we're so used to traditional tropes with that. And
Sure.
She, in her writing, totally goes against that trope, which for me was absolutely wonderful.
Well, Tony, since both you and Jake invoked the name of Peckinpah, I do have to ask because this book certainly reminds me of it. What is that old Peckinpah adage on like his violence in his films not meaning to entertain? I forget what he said. Something I think to some college student or something.
Yeah, someone wrote in and was like I don't find this film was not entertaining, blah blah blah. And Sam wrote back, Uncle Sam wrote back and said, I am not. I don't put violence in this film to entertain you. I put it in to make you examine your immortal soul.
Nice.
I mean, Sam was famously I think he was a Korean. Was he a Korean War veteran or was he a World War II veteran?
I think he was Korean.
I think it was.
May have been World.
I remember him talking about like he definitely served in China at some point, and he saw people shot. And so he had very specific views about, like, the idea of violence as entertainment because he'd seen the real thing happen, and amusingly, he's like the Alan Moore of film. Like a bunch of people saw what he did and thought that's really groovy and have done it for completely like the opposite reason that Sam was doing it. Like the slow-mo balletic violence and the squibs and stuff is now part of, modern action film. But, Sam could make you care about everybody who died. And that was his trick. Like I saw Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid the other day, and there was this like sort of throwaway scene of like a character that we only meet very briefly who dies in a shootout. And they just have his wife walking out afterwards to the body, like kind of while the shootout is still going on when it's not really safe to be doing this. And it's just the most moving thing. And it's just an extra 15 seconds of him doing this to acknowledge that this person who was shot was a human being who had people who care about him. And it's one of the great lessons of film to do that, or just of storytelling is you have to make people care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the stories I heard about Sam Peckinpah is that you were talking about how he saw violence firsthand. Is that I think the story goes that he saw somebody killed by a sniper, and he said the whole thing was in slow motion, like for him, which makes it so interesting that he kind of revolutionized for me, and I'm sure you guys too. Like when you think of violence in slow motion, you think of Sam Peckinpah. And for him to be like, that's how how he actually saw it, happen in front of him is kind of like fascinating.
Yeah, it was World War II, and it was between the Chinese and Japanese. I had to pull up the Wikipedia
Oh,
page.
there you go. Good. Excellent.
But I was curious.
I stand corrected.
For all those Peckinpah historians out there who are just reeling that we didn't get the war right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, verisimilitude here. We pride ourselves.
I appreciate
the
accuracy.
I was about to start typing in Wikipedia stuff, so I appreciate you doing that, Tom.
Speaking of which, though, I mean, you guys get the period down pat. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of research, both in terms of the writing and was that Zeppelin? Is the Zeppelin cassette pink, if I remember correctly, or the?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
The A-track. Yep.
Tony found that out. So I try to do as much research as I can in the script because I'd rather artists spend time drawing rather than Googling. But obviously, I wasn't going to be able to do it all. And then Tony took what I did and just expanded on it massively. We sent a lot of reference photos back and forth.
She was great.
There was not like I hopefully didn't feel dictatorial. It was more like, here's a mess of things I've downloaded because I'm a research nerd. do with them what you
No.
what you want.
It was absolutely wonderful. There was some stuff like, oh, I would never have thought of this. Other parts like that, it's great, but it doesn't fit. But for me, it really came down to from the art side, making sure again you're immersed in there. So I avoided for reference almost all media outside of news photos and like Getty images, because if we watch anything at the time, like it's an idealized version of it. So therefore, if I wanted to show what it's actually like, it's not, oh, I'll go put an Easy Rider. I'll go put in something from 68 through 71 in there and just draw from there. Like, no, that's not what people look like. It's you go through, find like the Kent State riots. You go and you see just the different other Vietnam protests. See, what did their hair actually look like? What did the normal people look like? All the clothing there, try to get that. Try to make sure that nothing was from actually 1971. Everything was from like 1970 to 1965, because it's not like everyone went out and bought brand new in 1971. The older vehicles were in the 50s, early 60s. Just everything had that greater sense and feel that it was authentic. It was there. So that way, when you're reading, it's not, oh, I remember this dress from Almost Famous. It's, I've never seen this before. This looks weird. Oh, that's actually what they wore? My God, that people actually put their hair like that? There you go. So I really wanted to bring people to that. And it was with Alex's script. And again, she had so much reference it gave me as well. It was absolutely wonderful because it helped me just to focus on, okay, this is what 14-year-old girl in a bedroom, this, okay. And even when I do have to pull out the Google Fu, it made it so much easier.
And we had a lot of fun finding it's on the inside front cover of each single issue was kind of our criminal du jour, because I think you know an era by its famous criminals. And so we had Jane Fonda giving her Black Power salute and talking about how all property was theft in issue 1 when our lead characters meet some hippies. Because obviously, what's more amusing than having actual communists meet people who live in a commune?
I never thought about it in those terms, but yeah.
Here we were, in some ways romanticizing the communist ideal while vehemently rejecting the reality of it. Our final criminal is, of course, Ronald Reagan.
The greatest criminal of them all.
Yeah. Talking about, shooting protesters at Berkeley.
Yep.
Now, in doing, you mentioned that you're a research junkie. Is that kind of the appeal of doing period piece books like, like Mayday, and I believe your upcoming book, Bad Girls with Victor Santos, is a period piece as well.
I love history. I start researching something, and then I just there's just so much out there, and there's so many interesting stories, and in some ways the true stories are far more imaginative than the ones we can imagine. I found so many wonderful side stories researching Mayday as well. Bad Girls is already written. It's been written for a couple of years. That was fun to research, and there are a bunch of real little things in there that are just that really give detail to how people react. And it's not the big picture stuff. It's the little things. Like there's a scene in issue 4 of Mayday where Felix, the one who's less worldly, the one who grew up in Volgograd and Stalingrad, and was kind of a street kid and is very badly educated, and but he's that guy that on a normal operating day-to-day level in a foreign country, he's not he's not coping very well. But when things start to go wrong, the more things go wrong, the better he is to have around. Also because his choices are totally immoral and he's a really good shot. Selectively immoral. But he goes out to buy breakfast for them, and he walks into a supermarket in San Francisco. And there are, as you would expect in California, huge tables piled full of oranges and pineapples and apples and all this fruit. He's coming from Soviet Russia. And he's just standing there staring at the oranges, kind of amazed that there's nobody guarding them. That they exist in that number in just a random store down the street from where he's staying, and B, that there's no armed guards standing there saying he can only take 2 or 3. So he like buys this entire grocery bag full of oranges because communist hoarding instinct is a thing. If you speak to anyone who came over, like probably their fathers or grandfathers or grandmothers who came over from the ex-Warsaw Pact countries in the 70s or early 80s and be like, yeah, what was it like seeing a supermarket full of fruit? They will tell you about crying and things and just being amazed. So like it's little details like that. It's not necessarily the great picture. It's the emotional realities that people had at the time that become fascinating. But yeah, I read almost all nonfiction. I really dig history. There's so much crazy shit that happened. Like the world is a cool place.
It is, and you really take advantage, with this book. I mean, certainly with the for those listeners at home that don't know, like Mayday protests against the Vietnam War actually happened, which I think quite a few people don't know and you reference it. I believe it's like the cover for issue 4. If the government won't stop the war, we will stop the government. I was like, oh my God, that's real.
It's really timely. And that was language taken directly from a protest poster advertising the Mayday protests. And there were 250,000 people marching. In San Francisco, there was 500,000 in Washington, D.C., and there were several protests of that size. And they were, you can look up some of the old San Francisco newspapers, and there's pictures of protesters being gassed and being ridden down by horse cops. Like it's, the pictures are horrifying.
Absolutely. Now, on a slightly, lighter note, we had kind of invoked Zeppelin, or at least Zeppelin 4. You really, embrace the musical possibilities. But what I love about this in particular is you're not necessarily going for, friendly Dick Clark top 40. You're going for, MC5. You've got, we all love the Stooges here and everything. So, what made you kind of pick those songs to kind of juxtapose against the events of the story?
Sometimes, a bunch of different things. I didn't care, like, if anyone thought I was cool because of the soundtrack. It wasn't trying to be a cool soundtrack. It was just trying to fit the story. And I was interested in 1971 was very much kind of like the high tide mark of American idealism. Like there was this kind of crusty high tide mark, and then things had started to recede already, and the beach had started to smell. It was that was the era, and we all think of it as still the hippie era, like when people we're going to San Francisco with flowers in our hair. But by 71, we were on Led Zeppelin 4. The Stooges had 2 albums out. The Black Sabbath had 2 albums out. Like, metal was a thing. And nobody really thinks it started that early. So I was trying to show an era in transition by showing the music that people didn't really think was don't associate with what was happening at the time. And that was essentially a lot of really poor people getting tired of hearing about hippies and free love, and when they didn't have shoes. Like, oh, I'm going to go barefoot. Well, like Ozzy Osbourne was going barefoot because he couldn't afford shoes. It's all very well to say I'm going to tie flowers in my hair and wander around barefoot, like if you have that choice, and nice middle class parents to run back to. And we had the 50s, which were a time of great financial boon for America coming out of World War II with an actual infrastructure and not massive amounts of debt. The 60s saw things start to wind down, and by 71, there was a lot of poverty in America as other countries were getting back on their feet, and the Far East especially Japan, was getting back on its feet. And so I was tying songs to scenes. I wanted to have a lot of early metal in there. And other than that, it was just what song fit particular scenes. And a lot of the music is what's called diegetic, which means it actually happens. The characters are listening to it in the actual scene. It's being played on a radio or something else. And it's a broad variety of music. There's some really terrible pop music in there that was like top 5 songs that they have not survived, which all gives us hope that like Justin Bieber won't survive. But, there's a Donny Osmond song that is just the worst song. It's grating. One Bad Apple. There's a Knock 3 Times, which was the biggest song of the year. It's sort of sounding it's a strange it's like a weird stalker song. It's one of those songs you listen to and you're like, I don't think the lyrics mean what you think they mean. There's a lot of modern classical on there as well. I used Steve Reich music to soundtrack a lot of scenes. There's some of the more psychedelic Pink Floyd. The later like Ummagumma psychedelic, not the early Syd Barrett psychedelic. What else do we have? And then we get into like issue 4 is pretty much all like I kind of set up all of this like white music that was popular at the time and also underground and cool at the time. And then issue 4 is like, by the way, this is all the black music that it was ripping off. So we have Last Poets and Gil Scott-Heron and Sun Ra, who was actually at Berkeley at the time as a professor teaching a class. Parliament, Funkadelic. There's just so much, and it's fun to play with songs and scenes, and they're all intended to fit the rhythm and the mood of a particular scene. They're not random.
Well, and I think last time you were on, you hinted at that the next story arc would kind of explore, the Baader Meinhof group and go into Berlin. So I guess we have Krautrock to look forward to.
Yes, you do.
Excellent.
And I'm sitting down to write that soon. I've had a popular moment, and I had a bunch of things I have to finish writing, and I'm kind of almost done all of those, and it's making me happy. Because having too many open projects, I mean, I've got it all outlined. I just need to clone and I've had a bunch of life stuff going on. I moved to New York City and yada yada. I just need to clone myself because there aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah. Oof, not enough coffee. Yeah.
No.
So, the Felix is, obviously it's the codename Felix series. He's very much front and center in this opening arc, but, Rose is very much codename Rose is very much a survivor in her own right, and she's very much caught in between a rock and a hard place. Without going into too much detail, is this first arc kind of it for the character? No,
she doesn't show up in the next Brandenburg School for Boys, but she is the key character in the third one, Vienna Station. She's like, I love Rose because I always say she's my strong female character. She does not throw any punches or shoot a gun for the entire story, but that girl could survive nuclear war. She works in a very feminine way within the system that she's given, and she will stop at nothing to survive. But she's not like the cigarette smoking, like wisecracking, punchy, the usual comics strong female character. But you should never bet against Rose. Rose is savage, like in a really quiet, pretty blonde way. And we next see her when, and I'm not spoiling anything to say this, that Markov, who ends up as resident in Bucharest in Romania, gets caught out as a double agent and runs. And he's running to Vienna Station on the Dacia Express, which is the night sleeper from Bucharest to Vienna. And the entire arc takes place on the train because I am a crazy person.
That sounds badass.
Who likes formal challenges. And obviously everybody converges to try to either stop that from happening or make sure it happens. Jack continues, Penny continues, Simon continues for a little while. So the characters come back. and sometimes side characters come in and will go out again. Sometimes I bring in really nice, interesting characters you think will be around for a while, and then I kill them.
Yep.
Just keep you on your toes.
Of course. Like I said, twist after twist, and it
Yep.
it just draws us in deeper and deeper.
That's also a very Coen brothers. Like I feel any of the American directors, my scene pacing is most similar to the Coen brothers, because they do that thing of like every scene there has to be a twist. No scene should be linear. That's like screenwriting 101. That's story writing 101. But what the Coens will do is they'll give you a twist which is quite unexpected, and then right as the scene is ending, they'll do another twist. And that's a lot of how I do things. Like you think you've gotten through what the scene is about, and then you find out it was actually about something else.
Do you have a particular, this goes to both of you guys, do you have a particular favorite Coen brothers film?
Oh, what's my favorite kid?
Yeah, they are all my sons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. No, it's... Oh, I'm spacing the name. The one that's really popping out right now is the one with the straw. The straw and the hula hoop. Hudsucker Proxy.
Oh, yeah.
There's just something charming, which is totally the opposite of what we're doing here. Just there's something incredibly charming about that, where he has just a very simple image, and he's able to turn that, or that's a very simple image. Here's a circle. Like, what is that? And they repeat on that and repeat on that, where each one of these things just comes and pushes it further and further out, and the utter charm of all the characters, and just for me, incredibly charming film. But again, it's all of them except what was it? Big Lebowski? Is that Coen Brothers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not a
yeah,
huge
that's
fan
the
of
one.
Lebowski, because I just also
me neither.
Everybody fixated on it, and I'm like, just like leave it. It wasn't that great.
Yeah, I didn't. I respect it. I respect it. It just was like, yeah, I see where the comedy is, but I don't find it humorous. Now, I'm not going to take that if other people enjoy it. I'm happy they enjoy it. I'm not going to crap on other people's Cheerios. But it's one of those things that I'm like, it's not. I mean, there's so many other ones that are so wonderful, like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, were just beautiful things. And with that one, I couldn't do it. But all the other ones that pop to mind are all just, they're TV glue for me. I can't work with them on, because I'll sit there, I'll watch, I'll analyze the shot selection, I'll analyze them, how their pace, and I'll analyze everything with it. I mean, it is just wonderful on so many levels.
For me, I'd say Miller's Crossing or No Country for Old Men, depending on how I'm feeling. But like, I don't think anyone is surprised by me choosing those films.
If you had said, what was the one they did last year with Channing Tatum?
Oh, Hail Caesar.
Yeah, I
Caesar.
I loved Hail Caesar. It was basically like Joel and Ethan Coen giving you a big hug and being like, movies are great. And I'm like, yes, Joel and Ethan, they're really great. It was just the only weird thing about it, and like, I'm a film nerd, so seeing them do all these things that I knew about made me inordinately happy. It was just weird also seeing it in 16:9 though, because all of the shots they were echoing were originally done Academy format with more headroom. And like, I'm not in any way criticizing Roger Deakins as a cinematographer, because his work was masterful, but like, they were so good at recreating the movement and the mood that the fact that the frame was like the wrong aspect ratio and the headroom was slightly different from normal, it was like I was overanalyzing it. And it's not ultimately a fantastic, like, long-term memorable film, but boy, I had fun for those 2 hours.
Plus, you get Channing Tatum, dancing in a sailor costume.
Classic.
Who could ask for anything more?
Now,
I feel like they're like seeing Channing Tatum dance in costumes and out of costumes is something that the cinema has provided well for over the past 5 years.
Oh yeah.
Well, I guess that leads us to our recurring
Thank
question.
you, Cinema Jesus.
The Magic Mike Live is now on stage, but the in Vegas. This leads us to, of course, our recurring question. What are you guys currently geeking out over?
I thought our recurring question was, have you guys seen Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia?
Shit, I was hoping he'd forget. Damn it.
I still haven't.
Jake and I literally had a moment right before the interview where we were like, "Shit, we still haven't watched
I
it."
told both of you.
We're gonna disappoint her so much.
I just started a new job where I have.
told both.
Well, no, our thing is that way you keep coming on, so we don't watch Bring Me Ahead of Alfredo Garcia.
Don't put it on
You'll
that.
have to keep coming on.
I'm not disappointed. I just think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, I hang out in an extremely film geeky crowd. A lot of my friends are film critics, and we all have films, like major films that we haven't seen. Like my friend Simon, who writes for like the New York Times and Village Voice, has never seen Badlands. We're fixing that on Friday because they're showing it at a cinema in New York. But like, he's never seen Badlands, and like, up until last year, I'd never seen Deer Hunter. Like it's fine. Everybody has their and
Yep.
Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia is not. It's not like. It's not a masterpiece of world cinema.
Yeah.
It's a great film.
It's just taken
Which you
on like a
should see.
mythic status with us.
But the sad thing is, we own it.
Yeah, we own it, and
I
it's
literally,
been like.
literally bought it just so we could watch it, just
Yeah.
so we could talk
And
to
there's
you
days,
about it.
there's days we just sit around with silence, and we're like, "What should we do?" And there is Bring Me the Head of Alfredo
have
Garcia
2 hours.
staring at it.
The head of Alfredo Garcia literally rolls into the room.
We have no excuse.
It brought itself.
Yeah.
At least we saw the Wild Bunch. At least we saw Straw
Yes.
Dogs.
Yes.
But
Even the dog's mad at you.
Yeah, I know. Damn it.
We've disappointed Ian.
That's what hurts the
Actually,
most.
I think it's the cat on the fire escape.
Nah.
but yeah. So what are you guys currently geeking out over?
Other than Alfredo Garcia.
But I just saw Guardians of the Galaxy 2 today, so I'm still in that that cheesy fun that Marvel movie fun right now.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's, I mean, part of me I'm looking like, oh my god, this take me forever to draw with some of the sequences and some of the back of the scenery in there. But a lot of it is just that let's have fun at a movie. Yeah, we can have emotional character, we can have like content, we can have characters we care about, which we shouldn't care about these characters, but we do. But there's something to be said about having that fun, and also beyond that, I've just been so busy with other things. I am so behind on everything. I've got to see it before. I've got a convention in a couple weeks. I got to see it before I go there because I already missed Logan in the theaters. So I got to at least catch this. So otherwise, when people pop up with the spoilers, as they do out of enthusiasm, but I'm like, saw that. So I'm really in that silly, stupid fun, which is probably also why I brought up Headsucker Proxy, because I'm still in that silly, stupid fun mode. But that's kind of my thing right now.
I mean, in silly, stupid fun mode, I saw Fate of the Furious because there was one Friday night where I'm just like, I need to go out and see something that is happy and ridiculous. And it was happy and ridiculous. And also now I really want a Jason Statham Lone Wolf and Cub movie. And if you've seen F8, you'll know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Like it's great popcorn entertainment. I spent half the time with like my hand over my mouth going, "Oh my god," and the other half the time with my hand over my heart going, "Oh," because like that franchise handles like sentimentality and the intercharacter relationships and the family relationships really, really well. Ian, the cat doesn't care. He's not impressed with you.
That's why he's barking.
In other things I've seen recently, I saw my first Lena Wertmuller film, and she was Fellini's assistant on 8½, and then she went on to direct a whole bunch of films, probably best known for Swept Away. But I saw this film she did called Seven Beauties, which, like, if I spent my whole time in F8 with either my hand over my mouth or my hand on my heart, like, I spent all of Seven Beauties with my hands over my face going, "Oh, Lena, no, but yes, but no." It's about this Italian deserter who ends up in a concentration camp and decides to seduce the female Nazi chief, who is pig ugly, so he doesn't get killed. And it has the most embarrassing, uncomfortable sex scene I've ever seen outside of a Zack Snyder
I was
film.
going to say, yeah, Zack Snyder.
This was deliberate, and alas, Leonard Cohen got no royalties for it. But it's like a beautiful, crazy film that's so wrong, yet somehow works in a way that a lot of, like, because it's not earnest in any way. and it handles the tonal knife edge balance extremely well. And she also she'll do she doesn't over explain. There was also a new print of Tarkovsky's Stalker that just came out in New York, which I went to see because I am like the world's biggest Tarkovsky stan. And Stalker is one of my favorite sci-fi movies, along with Silent Running and Star Wars, actually Empire. It's just it's such a minimal film, and you don't know whether one of the characters is kind of making everything up or not. And I'd read the book. I'd read the Strugatsky Brothers' Roadside Picnic, which I highly recommend, the new translation of it, before going to see it. So it was the first time I'd seen Stalker knowing what the book actually was. And Tarkovsky only takes essentially the end section of the book, and then he makes it much more fairy tale-like and kind of metaphorical. And it's really wonderful. I've been on a big Soviet-era sci-fi kick, and I'm reading Stanislav Lem's Solaris, which is another great book. So that's kind of what I'm geeking out over. I'm also geeking out over Anglo-Scottish and French politics of the late Middle Ages, because I'm writing something about the 100 Years' War, and wow, English politics in the 1300s were kind of mad. Don't be friends with the king. It ends badly for you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Solaris earlier. Was that the basis for Soderbergh's film?
Yes, those Soderbergh's films was based on Tarkovsky's film Solaris.
Oh.
Yeah, because there's also a Russian version of Solaris that came out in the 70s.
Yes,
Yeah.
Stanislav Lem was Polish, and I believe originally wrote Solaris in French, but it was distributed in Russia as well, in Russian.
Yeah.
And one of the really fascinating things, by the way, about Roadside Picnic, speaking of things distributed in Soviet Russia, is reading the process that the Strugatskys went through of getting the book published, and all of the committees they had to go through, and what they had to redact and what they had to change, and all the little bullshit political infighting. And it was kind of horrifying to read that, especially with where American politics are going right now, towards a more totalitarian state, which communism approached through the other direction but ended up in the same place. Because the amount they had to change the book to get it out was frightening, and the new translation is what they took it back to what they wanted to write, which they were not able to publish in the government's time. But yeah, Stanislav Lem is really well known in Europe, and he's not as well followed here for some reason. Solaris is just about the only one you can find of his books in currently released paperback. I have another of his books, Invincible, which I'm going to read after this, that I got secondhand through Abe Books. Bless them.
Love them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fun fact about the original Solaris, 2 VHS tapes long.
I did not know.
We had that at my Blockbuster when I was working there.
It's a Tarkovsky film. They're long. Andrei Rublev is still two DVDs, which is one of his historic films.
I'll have to check that out. And then of course you two will have to watch Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia.
At this point, it's like you can't watch it because it would kind of violate some law of the universe.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like Jake watching Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh yeah, when we started this podcast 3 years ago, I made a promise that I'd watch Trouble with Tribbles, and I've yet to watch Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah.
So it's
you can get everything from just seeing a couple of stills. If that's what it is. It's Trouble with Furballs, and that's it.
Might be better that way.
I have a toy Tribble. He was playing with it the first several weeks that we were recording.
That's what prompted the bet.
Yeah. This is a real thing? Okay.
This was an entire 50-minute episode of Star Trek. Okay,
yes,
all right.
yes.
And part of it.
It's not just like a fluffy earmuff broken off its handle.
Yeah.
It's one.
The other
half
thing I
of
want
a
to geek
Princess
out
Leia
about
wig.
briefly is Terrence Malick's Badlands, which I'm seeing on Friday, which will be in the past once this comes out. It is one of the films that significantly influenced Mayday, the others being Easy Rider and Zabriskie Point. It's what I would consider the best of those three films. I mean, I have a lot of love for Zabriskie Point. I'm charmed by Easy Rider. It is an important film, though it is not a great film. Fight me. Though, true fact, I'm not guesting at New York Comic Con this year. I'm not doing very many Comic Cons this year at all because I need a year off. But I was going to go with friends, like just on Friday for fun, to actually go to a convention as a tourist and walk around, which I never get a chance to do. But they all dress up, so they're like, Alex, if you come with us, you have to cosplay. I'm like, this presents many philosophical and political difficulties. And then I worked out that I had a costume I could do. I'm going to go as Peter Fonda's character from Easy Rider.
Nice.
You want to hear something really funny when you're finished with the
I'm going
story?
as the wrong Captain America.
This is actually hilarious because when I designed, like, you might vaguely recognize the jacket that Felix wears towards the end of the Mayday because it is based off of Captain America's jacket. I just took the color stripes off because when I saw him, it was like he is such a fan of the American pop culture that he would find a way to get a jacket like it. He couldn't actually get the actual jacket because it would have been too popular or too hard to get a hold of or not approval, but something along. So at least he's as like a visual homage, like, look, I'm wearing this jacket right here. So when he has a jacket, so it's got the distinctive like snap on the collar and all that. It's as close as he can get to something like to a Western pop culture icon, which he is supposed to despise for his job and his country, but he absolutely loves.
Yeah.
And so with all that, actually ties into what one of the movies that you based it off of as well, and that was just and I didn't know about that till right now.
Hey.
So it's one of those things where
we were both thinking along the same lines. Yep.
Synergistically work together that way. So something new that everyone found out from this interview.
It's an exclusive.
Right. There you go.
Now,
it is.
When can we? We've talked a bit about the second arc. What can you kind of tease about? The second arc in the Codename Felix series, and do you have an estimated an ETA?
I need to write it first. I mean, it's outlined. I've had some cool stuff happen that just meant I had less time, and also the whole moving house thing. But the second arc is called the Brandenburg School for Boys, which was the CIA's name for Berlin base, their operation in Berlin, which is where you sent your young, and it was called the Brandenburg School for Boys because you sent your younger recruits there on TDY, on temporary duty, to get used to operating in a denied environment. So you'd send them off into like East Berlin and like get them used to being surveilled all the time and teach them how to what they call get black, which is like basically get off the grid, lose your surveillance. And then they would kind of like, that was their training wheels for case officers then going on to work in places like seriously behind the Iron Curtain. And so Jack gets sent there on temporary duty. And meanwhile, Felix is sent to aid an assassination that's going to be planned by essentially the stand-in for the Baader-Meinhof group. And the Baader-Meinhof group were fascinating and really tragic in a way, because it was a couple of middle-class girls and one bit of rough, Andreas Baader being the bit of rough, Ulrike Meinhof, not his girlfriend, I forget what the girlfriend's name was, the third one, who was not a great piece of work, whose parents were incredibly religious. But Ulrike Meinhof was a journalist and a sort of a real thinker, but she got so tied up in ideology and in the nature of their group's particular subculture and the Red Army faction's particular subculture that she just got her head all turned around. And she actually wanted to drop her kids off at a Palestine refugee camp so they could learn how to be proletariat. And everyone around her, like all of her friends who weren't in the Red Army faction but were kind of associated with it, kind of stepped in and stopped that from happening really quickly. But like this was how turned around she got. And in the end, basically, Baader and Baader's girlfriend bullied her to commit suicide. So there's a lot to be written about their interaction about allyship and wanting to feel more underprivileged than you are because it gives you a certain cachet, and about the nature of small toxic subcultures. Because I think especially in the geek community and in various music communities I've been a part of, there are subcultures where you all band together because you're different, but if you're not the right same kind of different, like, you get bullied within that group. And because those groups are seen as a safe place and where you belong because that's the music you listen to or the things you like or whatever, when they start to become very toxic and ruled by toxic personalities, it takes you a while to notice it, and you're kind of weaned to it, a bit like an abusive relationship where you think, well, I'm just not being good enough to be accepted. I will have to try to be better, when in fact the people that are bullying you are awful abusive bullies. And Andreas Baader was an awful abusive bully. So it's going to be this espionage metaphor for toxic fandom subcultures and bad groupthink and bullying, with assassinations. And also it's a lot about the nature of Berlin and Germany 25 years after the end of the Second World War. Let's see, it was 30 years after the end of the Second World War, because it takes place in 72. Which meant that anyone over the age of 50, was essentially was either a collaborator or was in East Berlin. Because all the socialists and the people who were actually fighting the Nazis ended up in the East. Which you'll learn if you read Misha Wolf's autobiography, which is fascinating. The Man Without a Face, because he was the head of the Stasi Foreign Service, the equivalent, the East German equivalent of the CIA, as opposed to the inward-looking Stasi depicted in The Lives of Others, which were essentially the equivalent of the FBI. And so you have a lot of essentially people who were Nazis who stayed in power in West Germany and in West Berlin because there wasn't anyone else.
Yeah.
And they kind of said, "We're very sorry. We're only doing it. We were only following orders. We couldn't do anything else. I couldn't leave my family and go east. I couldn't do that." But so you ended up with people who were changing their ideology to suit the changing winds, but who had at best just turned a blind eye to terrible atrocities, and at worst had actively encouraged them. Right. Anyone over 47 walking down the street?
Yeah. I mean,
what do you do? History is fresh there in a way that you don't feel it in America. Sometimes, at least not in the North.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, it's a heavy period. So I mean, but we're certainly fingers crossed and looking forward to its return, because with this first arc, you guys really have got us caring about Felix and Rose, and it's very interesting because Felix has essentially become a man without a country in many ways.
Or someone who is previously blindly loyal, and we'll see this as part of the character arc in Brandenburg School, was previously very blindly loyal to his ideology while being fascinated by America. And while he's still a patriot, he's now starting to realize true corruption of the system. And this is one of the kind of really heartbreaking things, of the whole relationship. Like, he and the Ulrike Meinhof character become friends. Like, Ulrike kind of adores him because she again sees him as like the true proletariat working class, because she's just a bit bonkers, and she keeps trying to give him books and things, and he's never really read a book for pleasure. It's just not something, he's not that guy. And she's pushing books on him, boring books about ideology, admittedly, because that's who she is. But at the end of the story, he essentially goes into a German bookstore and kind of asks for a book, and the bookseller's like, "What do you like?" And he's like, "I don't no. He doesn't want to admit that he's never read never read a novel. And so the bookseller is like, here, take this and take that. And I think gives him probably Rilke poems, because why not? Everyone needs to cry over Rilke at least once in their life. And then, something else, terribly Germanic, but he's very slowly developing into he's growing up in a way. In the way that people grow up in their 20s, like they think they've arrived. Like when they're 21, they think they know everything, and then by the time they're 30, they realize that they've just you're a very, very different person than you were when you were 20. Hopefully.
Oh God, I mean we're all 30 now. I hope so.
Definitely.
Yeah. But yeah. Well, do you guys have anything before we sign off? Do you guys have anything else that you guys would like to plug?
Not. I mean, I'll be at the. Let's see. Yeah, everything I've got right now. I can't never get ahead of your editor on announcing things.
Sure.
But nothing I can talk about. But I know Alex has some more. I mean, again, she has that wonderful book about the six women, the robbery, that I'm looking forward to seeing. So, but I'm going to step back.
Okay. Well, my next thing is if you're in New York this Wednesday, the night my comics come out, I'm doing Nerdist Comic Book Live at I think it's Joe's Pub at the Public Theater. So come heckle me. The next thing I have coming out is Bank Shot with Criss Cross and Snakebite on colors, coming out from Dark Horse. It's a 5-issue miniseries with a lot of explosions. Coming out in June. I'm not sure. I've got a Judge Dredd story coming out, I think, in June, and then another Judge Dredd story coming out, a longer one coming out near the end of the year in 2000 AD.
Yes.
Really looking forward to that. It's so great working with 2000 AD. I approached them as a female creator, and obviously I spent 10 years in England, so I'd somewhat pass as one of theirs. And they know I understand Dredd because I read a lot of 2000 AD. But when I first started talking to them, there was none of this, oh, do you want to write this C-list female character? Which is what the DC and Marvel would do. Oh, do you want to write like Silver Sable? No. I really don't. Give me the same choices as the boys. And 2000 AD, Titan were just like, oh, you want to write Dredd? Go right then. Yeah. It was that simple. There was no tryout. It's like, hey, here's Batman. Okay. Angry future Batman. RoboCop. I've got just announced from Gallery 13, which is a Simon & Schuster imprint, a book called Bad Girls, which is a graphic novel, will be coming out next year with Victor Santos, who's doing Violent Love at Image right now. And Bad Girls is a heist book set in over 12 hours from sunset to sunrise on the night of December 31st, 1958 in Havana, Cuba. And any students of Cuban history will know that is the night that Batista fled the island. The previous president and kleptocrat in chief fled the island. The island fell to Castro, or was liberated by Castro, depending on who you ask. And life changed irrevocably for everybody involved, most especially, as well as all the Cubans. It was the end of the great mob era of the great mob casinos, the great U.S.-run mob casinos. And in the chaos of that night, there are these three girls, a gangster's girlfriend who's in a very abusive relationship with a gangster who runs one of the casinos, a jazz singer who's heavily in debt to the casino, and a mambo queen whose partner was killed by Batista's generales for making a cartoon showing Batista as a pig feeding from Cuba as a trough. And they end up with $6 million. That's kind of like one of the generals was collecting a last round of money before basically heading to Miami, because nobody knew Batista left for a long time. Like for most of that night, Batista just got on a plane and fucked right off. And like the news did not travel because he left from a military airport. Like the wealthy knew and like kind of started hearing rumors and started drifting to the airports to leave. But the average people were just having New Year's Eve. So they end up with $6 million. All they have to do is get out of Cuba.
Which is easier said than done.
Hey, it's hard to... they have enough trouble just getting out of the casino.
Oh.
it's all set. It's similar to what I did with Tony with that second issue of Mayday. It's got maybe 4 locations. It takes place over 12 hours. It's a very tight, compressed little noir. And really, it is mainly about the expat experience of Cuba. I'm not trying of foreigners perching on the edge of Cuba. I'm not trying to recount the Cuban experience because it's not my story to tell. We do reflect both sides of the revolution, from the people that are absolutely thrilled that Batista is leaving to, what happens when mob mentality runs riot. And there's this wonderful character who's the 4th girl named Kitty. She's this 18-year-old wannabe actress from the U.S. who's in Havana goes to Havana to try to meet famous people. And she, she's traveling while all this shit is going down, this incredibly heavy shit. She's traveling around trying to find this party where Marlon Brando is supposed to be. Because she wants to meet Marlon Brando. And Cuba is falling down around her, and she is not noticing. Because I don't know, everybody who reads the book loves her because we've all either been that girl or known that girl. She's the one kind of always looking over your shoulder to see who else is at the party that she'd rather talk to. In a really unironic, naive, thinks she's doing no wrong way.
Well, and you were saying that comes out next year?
Next year.
All right, sweet.
I don't have an exact release date yet. It's written. Victor is drawing it.
Nice.
We're on the way.
Cool.
I'm looking forward to that Dread.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, the Dread is the first one. I always like to say it's I'm co-writing it with my friend Arthur Wyatt, who's done a lot of Dread. And I just say it's like J.G. Ballard meets Raymond Chandler. If J.G. Ballard and Raymond Chandler had a baby, and that baby had an ASBO. An ASBO is a British thing, which is an antisocial behavior warning. Basically, if you're, for graffiti, for noise, for just being drunk and loud, you get an ASBO.
Nice.
I'm looking forward to that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, again, Mayday Volume 1 comes out in comic book stores everywhere and on Comixology on Wednesday, May 24th. Alex, Tony, thanks again for coming on the show.
You're
Thanks
welcome. Check out our various websites. I'll probably put Mayday #1 up for free so people can download it and try it. I'm Alex DeCampi everywhere on social media. Tony Parker is Tony Parker Art, pretty much everywhere on social media.
Pretty much ever. Yep. Try to keep it easy.
Yeah.
Right on, right on. Well, thanks again, guys. I have to credit, Alex for coming on the show for 4 times.
Yeah.
It's always surprising to me when people come back for more, let alone this many times. It's surprising to me that the 3 of us have come back 150 times.
Yeah. I've been here for every single episode,
Yeah,
I
you're
think.
the only one who's been for every episode. Well,
I wasn't here for an interview.
But he was here for the bookends.
Yes.
yes, the bookends.
Yes.
So there's no,
Yes.
yeah, everything in its own time.
Yeah.
And Chris Nolan's indelible stamp.
Yes.
I mean, it is my studio.
Yeah.
Most of my equipment.
Yes.
You're using Josh's headphones.
I am.
Yeah, might as well be using his mic too.
Yeah.
But the as long as you don't eat, drink, and swallow into it like you do it all the time. But we love you, Josh. Yeah. We also Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Tony was mentioning that in his interview, and we all saw it as well.
We did.
I think there's slight differences of opinion, which always makes for an interesting kind of. I feel like I'm probably either right down the middle or I'm more pro. I don't know if I ever definitively got where
you did not. I've been pretty low profile on my reaction to the movie. As per usual, overall thumbs up because I just enjoy a fun time in the theater. But I gotta say, there were some parts of it that I just did not enjoy. So I'm kind of in the same realm as you, Sam, where I'm kind of right down the middle. Where it was good, it was really good. Those heavy hitting, emotional, family moments, tear to the eye, but a lot of the humor, the humor was what I loved about the first one. But the in this one, it was just, it seemed out of place. I was like, oh, cool, Dave Bautista told everyone that he knows how to act, so they're giving him an actual character, and he's doing things, but I don't like it because there was nothing that bridged the two, like, it was two different characters. There was no bridge to it. Except, like, originally he was just a guy that didn't understand, metaphors and whatnot. He's like a very literal species or whatever it was. In this movie, he's just doesn't give a fuck about anyone else.
Well,
finds everything funny because he has such a dark past
and literal interpretation of things.
Yeah.
Him and Groot, for better or worse, are just strictly comic relief this time around.
And I didn't really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, though Dave Bautista does have perhaps my favorite, and we're going to get into spoilers here, so if you haven't seen it and you're trying to avoid that, maybe you know how it goes here.
Yeah.
There is that moment where he's just like, my nipples.
Yeah.
Like, that's my favorite.
It was funny, but I thought it was poorly placed. I think if it had been when he takes it off, and it had been like, oh, my nipples, like, I think. In my head, I was like, "Oh, that would have been funnier." That's where I would have placed it because it was just, I don't know. But fine, his nipples.
At that point, you were checking out.
Yeah, at that point, I was like, "Oh, okay." We've gotten all the sad, Star-Lord's mom is dead, and his father is a evil maniacal. Like,
how quick does he fucking turn into a bad guy? Like, it's
pretty awkward.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's
they had the like minimalist the least amount of foreshadowing to that they good recovery.
yeah.
I just decided to
the rumble and stumble and fumble, and you got it though.
Just destroy the sentence, start anew.
Yeah.
They put forth the least amount of effort possible. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
For foreshadowing it with just with Mantis just being like, oh,
yeah.
And that's all you got.
Yeah.
And then and like you were like, oh, what's this weird plant thing that he's putting on the earth that we've never had a reference to, even though the universe that this movie takes place in has had like a million movies on Earth.
Yeah.
But then like it shows that it was a spontaneous growth 30 years later.
Yeah. I can't think of many Marvel movies that I liked as least amount as Guardians 2.
Ultron?
I liked Ultron more than Guardians 2.
Oh, that's a kick in the nuts.
Thor 2 probably still the weakest because like it's just nothing there. Like, and I don't like.
And I can agree with you on that one. The Thor 2 is probably.
I like the end of. I thought the final battle was cool, but like in Thor 2,
I think Thor 2 probably like the least useful of the movies.
Yeah.
It was the biggest throwaway of a movie.
Sure. And Guardians 2, like I was annoyed during a lot of Guardians 2. And I love everyone involved in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
I'm not taking glee in not liking Guardians 2. I'm going to put that out there right away because I think James Gunn, what he's doing for the Marvel Universe and for filmmaking and the way he's so easy to reach out to on Facebook and respond to people is fantastic.
Oh, and how about his brother? I forget his first name. Sean Gunn.
Yeah,
so
Kirk
good.
From Gilmore Girls.
MVP of this movie, in my opinion.
Well, I mean,
I loved him.
I'm never going to complain seeing more Kirk or Sean Gunn. And it's great, the brotherly thing. And then also like
he's in the Belko Experiment.
That makes sense.
Written by James Gunn, not directed by, but written by. Yeah.
But here's the thing, like I love the beginning because it felt like the Lethal Weapon 2 thing where you're jumping into the middle of an action sequence, and I love ELO, so that was awesome. I will say, kind of. The soundtrack didn't really do much for me for this one. It's not anywhere near the first one, and that's and that the way I feel about the soundtrack is kind of exactly how I feel about the movie. Like the soundtrack of Volume 1, classic. You know all those songs, you love all those songs, and even if you didn't know them before, like nobody really. I mean, who of your friends knew "Hooked on a Feeling" really before this came out? But now, but it's a song that when you heard it, you're like, oh, I love that song. This one is not necessarily bad songs, but there's nothing that really grabbed me outside of like ELO and I guess Fleetwood Mac, right? And.
Cat Stevens is on the soundtrack.
He is. But I don't know. Like, I liked the beginning. Here's something though. My favorite scenes from the movie are two of the post-credit scenes. I wish, obviously Stallone wasn't going to be a star in it. I mean, he wasn't going to be a main character in it.
I was excited at his I didn't know.
Someone shouted, "Oh shit!" when he showed up on.
Oh yeah,
when he popped in.
I didn't know he was going to be in this movie, so I got really excited when he came
I knew
on.
he was going to be in it, but I made sure not to know who he was playing.
The only big like spoiler that I got was Kurt Russell being Ego.
Yeah,
but thankfully I don't know anything about Ego, so I was like, cool.
I just wish that Kurt Russell and Stallone would have been on screen for at least a second.
That would have been
Tango
wonderful.
and Cash reunion. But I don't know, like, Sam and I were talking about this earlier. There's a lot of like things that kind of I didn't like about some of the characters in Volume 1, and they're just exaggerated in Volume 2. Like Drax, sorry Dave Bautista does nothing. Like, that the laughing nonstop was super grating.
It was
sorry Sam, but Nebula, why was she in this movie? Like, I thought her
to give Gamora something to do.
Well, Gamora is supposed to be like a badass warrior. Give her that to do, and instead they have her like this slap fight sister thing, but that like does. Yeah, we knew that from the first movie, and then it comes on this right turn where she's like, "I wanted a sister," and it's like, what? The whole movie you're playing angsty teenager, and I get it. Like she has to carry over Karen Gillan from the first one, but whoa, I was not a fan of that.
I agree. As much as I love Karen Gillan,
I do too.
Her presence in this movie seemed wasteful.
Yes. And I didn't.
Although I did like in their fight scenes, I did like how Gamora got to show off her badass. Like when she picks up the gun.
Picking up the gun was awesome.
I was just like, that's some
that was
She-Hulk
like,
shit right there.
Yeah, I was like, I don't care about anything. Oh yeah, the whole time I was thinking like, man, if she was like super jacked, we could just call her She-Hulk. And give me the She-Hulk Netflix TV series. But for real, world, take whatever you want from me, but give the world a She-Hulk series, because Jesus God, that'd be awesome. But I like that her picking up the gun was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, that's some Gamora shit right there.
Yeah.
As much I love Chris Pratt more than anybody else in this world. But he felt
more than
like
Anna Faris.
He is.
Yeah. And I love Anna Faris too. But like
he is the best Chris.
But yeah. But I mean, I felt that like he was like underused in this movie, kind of like he. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
he was just a.
He's kind of just in awe of Kurt Russell, which we all would be. But
I understand like your first meeting your father, and like that's going to overshadow pretty much everything that's happening. But like, I was like, oh, he's just a puppy following his dad.
And like it is just them as rock monsters punching in the end and a Pac-Man. Like I get it.
It was a scene harkening back for me. Big Trouble in Little China, where the masters are just like no, and it's like little like energy fighters fighting against each other.
Here's something. I'm not a smart man. Okay. But I remember when I know what Marvel is. But when Avengers first came out, the first Avengers came out, loved it. I saw it with our friend Chad and his brother Eric. It's like I never thought this movie would work in a million years. I'm so glad it did. Amazing. But I remember thinking in the back of my mind, and Guardians 2 is not this for me, but it's proving this point for me where one of these days you're going to get to a movie where the jokes just don't stop and you're like fucking knock it off for like 2 seconds. And here's something else. Like for me, nothing got me emotional in this movie. There's nothing hit with me. And because I think the reason was the humor is like this massive firework going off, and in the middle is this tiny little match they light. Like, hey, look at, remember, the family aspect of it. And for me, I don't know, like, I was talking to Sam either, like, I almost pulled a Chris Nolan of going, oh, in the theater, because the ripe joke about the fruit, like, was so, like, it was being set up for like 10 minutes.
No, that killed me.
And when I saw Nebula holding it, I was like, don't you fucking say it. And then, she said, I was like, Jesus Christ.
She had the potential to have a decent scene with that, but she just threw it away.
Well, the character is also super one note.
Yeah.
And a lot of the characters are one note.
Yeah.
I will say for me the MVP of the movie is Rocket. Like, I think he's so great. Like Sean Gunn does the motion capture, and of course Bradley Cooper does the voice. And anytime Rock is on screen, I thoroughly enjoy the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love him so much in this movie and in the first movie as well. Yondu, I thought was pretty great.
I was about to say follow-up MVP.
Most people,
Michael
I would
Rooker.
say, I think, because I knew about the Mary Poppins thing before.
I did not.
But
I
it
did
still
giggle with that.
made me laugh so fucking hard.
Yeah.
And it's his delivery of this, like, he thinks
Yeah.
Mary Poppins is the coolest guy in the world. Mary Poppins, y'all. Like, it was just
There's been so much like fan art with it already.
Oh,
too.
yeah. And actually, I lied. The part that did get me, of course, we mentioned spoiler stuff. The part that, like, I did feel this, like, tug of emotion is Yondu's death in
Yes.
space. Like that.
Oh, my
and
God.
that all comes from Chris Pratt. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, I wish we had more of that. Like, you know, again.
yeah.
And that was fantastic.
I almost want, buddy cop, prequel.
And also because it's leading to, like, kind of like Stallone as Starhawk and the OG Guardians, which give me that fucking movie as soon as possible. Holy shit.
Got Ving Rhames, Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah,
Ugh.
seriously, man. But, like, the fact that Yondu's dead really bummed me out because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he could have, because obviously, Yondu kind of became his own thing, but obviously he has a tie to the Guardians.
Do you like the full hawk?
Oh, yeah, I did. No,
Yeah.
I was very excited to see that, and I knew it obviously from pictures and trailers and stuff. But I was excited to see the hawk, the full mohawk.
Much like Stallone, I did not know that was coming,
Oh,
but
sure.
I did know. I've seen like the comic book version of the
Yes.
character where he has the full.
He's a
hawk.
great look, like,
And yeah, I always thought that the short hawk was really cool. And
Yeah.
like when they first showed the full hawk, like just in the drawer, I was like,
Well, yeah, when they showed it in the drawer, I was like, wait, that looks lame.
yeah. But then on him,
Yeah.
I was just like, fuck.
No, it looks great.
Yes.
Looks great. And so I'm remembering
Oh,
little things more
shit.
now than when I say, like, basically the other part that got me was Yondu's being, like, covered in rock, and he's telling Star-Lord, like, I don't use that thing with my mind, I use my heart or whatever, as he's getting covered up. Was pretty great. Like I said, Yondu was great, and Michael Rooker's great.
No,
and again, I'm so fucking bummed he's dead because I want to see more Michael Rooker Yondu.
Yeah.
Like, I thought maybe, they'd pull him in somehow or, like, thaw him out or something.
Yeah.
But he's pretty dead.
Yeah. It doesn't get much deader than that.
Sam, do they make again, because I was kind of like just like in fucking awe of seeing the fact that they're getting the other Guardians together. Do they mention Vance Astro? Like, because I know that he's like,
I don't think they
the
do,
guy.
actually, yeah.
Maybe they're saving him up.
Yeah.
They
He's
did
cool.
mention Adam Warlock.
That was cool
They
as
do,
shit too.
yeah.
That was my second favorite thing in the movie, and I think I saw the movie because it was a packed house at Centerville. I'm pretty sure the biggest Adam Warlock fan was in the theater somewhere because we kind of knew it was coming, because they show the coffin or the cocoon, and they're like, "I'll call him Adam," and the guy was like, "Yes, woo!" Like he was so excited, like he had his fucking Jim Starlin collection of
That's
of Adam
better.
Warlock.
That's better than when I went to see the first Avengers movie, and when Thanos comes on screen, someone shouted out, "Oh shit, it's Skrull!"
Yeah, Skrull. It's the Skrulls.
It was like King Skrull or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. I
Super
forget-
Skrull?
Yeah.
Super Skrull.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
And I was
Super
just like,
Skrull.
even I know that
Yeah.
that's not him.
Super Skrull's green, Chief.
Yeah,
But it was right during that
But it's
chunk
fucking
of
hilarious.
comics.
But I mean, again, I didn't hate, like, if you're talking about you had like the 2 thumbs up, the picture of you, like, mine's kind of like sideways thumbs with a who farted face. Like that's kind of like how I felt after Guardians.
Yeah.
I've become like such a fuck when I go see movies. Like I have super intense feelings one way or the other after I see it. And when I was leaving the theater, I was like, what a fucking disaster and a mess. I remember since Sam was like, how the fuck? Blah, 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 blah. But I kind of softened a little bit on it. And like I said, I can't get super bummed in a movie that does have Kurt Russell and a little bit of Stallone. I was bummed because I thought this was going to be, they were going to bring some more Nova Corps in it.
Yeah, I wanted some Nova Corps.
I think they had some ships that I saw floating around, and they mentioned it obviously.
You have
I mean,
to
you
figure
know
they're
James
rebuilding
Gunn-
them too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they do get
they
fucked
did lose
pretty
a lot
hard.
of people.
But I'm waiting
James
for
Gunn does love his Easter eggs, though, so I'm
He
sure
does.
there's plenty of
the
things.
cosmic thing I'm waiting for, like when I'm going to be the guy in the crowd in the post credit scene going fuck yeah, is the Richard Rider stuff, like when Nova, like the Green Lantern of the Green Lantern Corps, but Nova of the Nova Corps.
Yeah.
When
The Hal Jordan of
the
the Nova
Hal
Corps.
Jordan of the thank you. Yeah, so just naming the Corps, that doesn't help very much. And maybe a upgrade of the outfits. Although the second time I saw the first Guardians movie, I was like, okay. When I first saw the Nova Corps outfits like in a trailer, I was like, what the fuck is that? But I like it a little more now. But anyway, I'm waiting for the fucking Richard Rider to show up eating ice cream and getting sucked up into space or whatever his fucking origin is.
What did you think of the new Howard the Duck scene?
Oh yeah, it was, I'm fine.
Yeah,
he's there. I mean, my buddy, I saw it with best good friend Kev, and Kevin, and he was like, "Did you ever see that shitty fucking movie?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh shit."
Directed by George Lucas.
Yeah. George. Or no, was it produced? Yeah, not directed.
Yeah.
Produced.
Oh, Zemeckis, right?
I don't know.
Or am I?
Yeah.
Shits. I'm Sam suddenly.
Yeah.
There was another thing that
The Watcher?
The Stan Lee. I saw it with friend of the show Ken, co-star of Laserdix, or co-host of Laserdix.
He's star.
True.
Let's go. Yeah.
Stars.
I'm trying to just keep it consistent with what I have said in the past. I'm branding with my 3D glasses.
Yeah.
He got super excited when that scene hit because there's the fan theory going around that supposedly James Gunn has confirmed that Stan Lee is actually a watcher, which is why he keeps popping up.
Yeah, he does basically say I was a so-and-so and then I was a so-and-so.
Yeah. I don't think he's a watcher. He's talking to the watchers.
Yes.
He's like, hey guys, this shit happened, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Willard Huck directed Howard the Duck.
I was way off.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. I mean, Howard the Duck's fine. It was funny. He was like, "Oh yes, he was good."
I wonder if it's on Laserdisc.
But I'm sure.
I'm sure it's the right era.
Yeah. That shit was born to be on Laserdisc. Samuel.
Oh, I don't think it's as good as the first one.
No,
I think
sure.
that's safe to say.
Yeah.
I don't think the action set pieces are anywhere near as good.
Yeah.
I do like the little arcade stuff in the beginning. That was cool. That was a nice little, as someone that grew up playing arcades, it's always cool to see those 80s influences. The playlist isn't as great.
No.
It's pretty...
Not bad songs, but just not as
Fleetwood
memorable.
Mac shows up. That's nice. So does, ELO, like you were saying. George Harrison.
Yes. Oh, yes. I do love that song.
Yeah.
A minor cinematography thing. The opening scene with Groot dancing while they're all fighting. I would have loved it if he had just made one circle.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't make it all the way back to
That
where he
must have
started,
been a fucking
and that bothered me so much.
crazy thing to fucking make that scene, with all the moving parts going on in there, man.
It is expensive.
Really?
The Howard the Duck Laserdisc.
How much?
The cheapest one is $30.
Damn, son.
Then there's the Japanese version, which of course has the cooler cover for $50.
Damn it.
But it's uncut, so
I
don't know
liked
what that means.
I liked teenage adolescent Groot in the end, which he's just going, I'm Groot, kind of just oh fuck you. But yeah, I don't know. I still feel like Marvel hasn't nailed down their villain problem.
I mean, I will say he's a more personable villain than Ronan the Accuser in the first movie, but he's not as again, that's an awkward turn.
It is, and look, this is picking movie whatever, blah blah blah. We know why he says it, but if you're trying to get your son to join you, don't tell him you put a tumor in your mom's head.
Yeah.
When he's early...
that's when it's Jesus Christ, pull back some, because it just goes to full on.
Yeah, he just unloads on him after that.
Yeah.
It's I mean, again, when it focuses on depth over scale, I think it succeeds more, like Chris was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not. I certainly didn't have a bad time. I walked out. I was like, oh, this is pretty good, but it's not I'm still, waiting for Spider-Man. I'm still waiting for Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones I'm looking more forward to. And maybe that was just because walking in the theater, and I think you kind of echo this, it was never as big a deal for me.
No, and it wasn't. It's I don't know. I wasn't. I was just annoyed, and
Are you gonna see King Arthur: Legend of the Sword?
Oh, fuck. That movie was teetering, man. I love Excalibur and King Arthur and all that kind of shit, but this just looks
But
like
it's Guy Ritchie.
mess.
It's got Charlie Hunnam.
I don't like him. Looks like a fucking mess.
I remember what movie were we talking about, Sam, on Facebook Messenger?
We were talking about we were talking about Fate of the Furious, and I was like, I didn't actually.
Oh yeah. But you commented on the fact that I was like, after I saw it by myself, and I was like, hey guys, it was like popcorn fun action summertime hit. I loved it. You guys will hate it, just because of the character of me loving bad movies. And then you came back with, just for the record, I didn't actually hate it, and I was like, well. There's, what was it? It's still early in the year to be disappointed by movies, and you were like, "We can go see King Arthur," and I was like,
I think if I see King Arthur, it'll be one of those like Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. when like my eyes are still swollen from waking up, and everyone's like making the first batch of popcorn, or like Mr. Bozic, and I'm like, let's get this shit on the road.
It definitely looks like it's going to be pushing my limits of being able to enjoy just like mindless action, which is what Guy Ritchie excels at. So I'm hopeful, because I do love me some Guy Ritchie, but yeah, even I'm like, I don't want to pay full price.
I know you don't put any stock really in Rotten Tomatoes. I don't. And but for those that do out there and are wondering, 13%.
Now, one of my problems.
31.
Is it 31?
Ooh,
it flipped.
Yeah.
One of my issues with Rotten Tomatoes. I am dyslexic too. Yeah. One of my problems with Rotten Tomatoes is who's posting on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Movie hasn't come out yet. Like that's my thing. It's like I don't ever trust opening opening weekend. Like that, to me, that's just a rubric for who had the best marketing, not who has the best movie. And same with like Rotten Tomatoes scores before a movie comes out. That's just who was able to, I don't know, it's mostly at this point just critics who I rarely listen to anyway, and maybe some people that got to see an advanced screening, or like there's no way to prove that you've actually seen the movie, so it could be fucking people going on there and being like, I don't like this person.
Now I will say, I did see the trailer, and
I love this person, and they're blowing it out of proportion.
I did, it does look garbage though.
Yeah, no, I agree. That I am hopeful, but not. I'm expecting the worst, but hoping for decent.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I'm not in a fucking hurry for that one.
No, I think much like it's going to be like I have nothing better to do, or I have a couple friends that want to go see it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know my friend Victoria wants to see it.
Just do the fucking King Arthur right. Normal.
Yeah.
It's a cool enough story on its own, I promise.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Read the Howard Pyle stuff.
Watch Disney's Sword in the Stone.
Once and Future King.
Yes, the Once and Future King. I have the audiobook, and I believe it is 33 and a half hours. 12 hours shorter than it.
Yeah. Of which I have almost completely given up on.
Interesting. I've hit a wall, not for lack of trying, but it's one of those things. If I'm not in the mood to listen to an audiobook, I'm not going to play it and then forget everything that's happening and zone out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've kind of hit a wall with it.
There's just so much in it that I'm just like,
where,
how
do you
does
remember
this?
Where exactly? Like,
I think I made it through part 1, maybe part 2.
Are they kids again? Like, are they back talking about when they first encounter?
I think that's what is just about to start.
Yeah. They did the thing where they go to like each of them as adults.
Yeah, and I was just like, fuck this. Like, I did not need a 20-minute long scene of this guy's wife just being like, "Don't leave."
Oh
me.
yeah.
I was about to check out at that.
Yeah,
like, I was like, Steven Weber, I love you, but fuck off.
He goes hard on that.
Oh my god,
he goes
hard in a motherfucker.
He goes hard. Yeah.
He feels good in the motherfucker.
Did you guys see the Dark Tower trailer? Speaking of Stephen King,
No,
it does not look like the best trailer.
Well, I remember I asked one of my friends who loves the books, and I was like, "Are all the books just about how cool you can reload your gun in slow-mo?" Because that's the entire trailer, is how cool you can reload your gun.
Do you like how they
slow-mo.
bring in the music box for a few dollars more?
I listened to the first book, and
The Gunslinger.
yeah, and got about maybe a third of the way through the second book, and I just
Second one
couldn't.
isn't that great.
I could not get into the first book. My fault. I somehow managed to get the tracks out of order. So, like, it wasn't until about halfway through the book that I realized that I wasn't listening to it linearly.
And like track 4 was like, "Thank you for listening to
this
the
has
Gunslinger."
been this has been a production of Audible.
We hope you enjoyed.
I'm
Yeah.
like, there's still 10 tracks.
Executive
left.
produced by, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, Scott Aukerman. What?
Scott Aukerman. Ends with the Kevin Smith.
I the wolf dead.
Yeah, the wolf did.
Just go through all the
Yeah.
different podcast tags that we know.
Just forever ingrained in my brain.
I missed the extended version of that. They don't do it anymore.
I
but-
miss the fucking intro, the original song to How Did This Get Made?
Oh yeah,
It's always the remix.
yeah.
Nothing wrong with the remix, but I love the
Or
original.
now they have a new remix.
I know, yeah, they have a new
because
new
they
remix.
realized that Paul didn't get his own little.
Yeah.
Because it's Paul and June getting literal. Jason's getting laid. June's making sure all the monkey shots getting paid.
Yeah, that's right.
Here's a real question for you: how did this get made?
I do like
Oh.
I do like in the mini episodes when someone wins
Yeah.
and like, "You win,
Ding 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 ding!
yay, you win." I always look forward to that.
By the way, Paul Scheer, sponsor us.
Oh, he's the best.
But I'm over 100 pages into The Stand now.
Yeah.
Yay. Out
Which
of
is-
like 1,200.
Oh, a little. Yeah, there's in in one of the chapters of The Stand.
That was fucking hilarious when I got that text from Sam.
There's a chapter in The Stand where a character gets a blowy and screams Wilma like Fred Flintstone. And the only thing more awkward than like than reading a like a Tom Clancy sex scene is reading a Stephen King sex
Oh my
scene.
God, they're so awkward. Ugh.
Yeah.
I felt dirty listening to Steven Weber tell me
Yeah, there's
how
some in
Stephen
it,
King
man.
wrote it.
There's
Oh,
some in it, man.
yeah.
Yeah, and he describes he just can't stop describing the blowy as being gobbled. I think the first time he does it is being gobbled like a Purdue drumstick.
Oh.
And I'm just like,
Jesus
this is like,
Christ.
yeah. Wilma!
Ugh. Ugh.
Yeah, so you have that to ruminate on. But yeah, the trailer does not look great. It kind of looks like a little too much Sorcerer's Apprentice, not enough, Once Upon a Time in the West, which is kind of what
Jim West?
I'll take Jim West.
What's his
over-
damn mind in the West?
Love less.
No, hold back. Hold him back. Hold him back. It's like turning into the Hulk. Gotta just chill.
That's my secret. I'm always Jim.
Yeah, just gotta chill.
No, it's I think we'll see more as it goes. It's a first look trailer. Certainly the first I've seen of it. I think Roland Deschain, Idris will do a fine job. I think Matthew McConaughey can be a good Man in Black, a good Randall Flagg.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll find out. And hopefully that's the only fantastical, I don't know,
They're remaking Firestarter too.
boy.
Or rebooting, whatever.
I'm a fire starter.
No.
Vicious fire starter. I hope that's in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Prodigy.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Indeed.
Man, you guys got anything else going?
Just excited. There's really nothing to talk about, but I just, for the record's sake, let it be known, let it be written that
Let it
they
be.
announced the Judge Dredd Mega City 1 TV series. That's really all they got going. That's just very new information today, kind of out of the blue.
Mm.
I saw 2000 AD posting that, and I was like, "Holy shit! That's all I've wanted. I've wanted a TV show for Judge Dredd. That's the perfect medium, I think, for Joseph Dredd."
If anyone else is also watching Riverdale, I believe the time that this episode comes out, the finale was last week.
Oh shit!
Because the finale is tomorrow.
Okay.
For when we're recording. Which and I'm somehow late to the game, but apparently it was announced last year, last year that Sabrina, the Teenage Witch, is going to be in the season finale. And
Wait, the actress or the actual character?
the character, 'cause
Character is Sabrina.
it's an Archie Comics character.
As are
right,
Josie
that's
and the
right.
Pussycats.
Yeah, and Josie and the Pussycats has been in the show since episode 1. But yeah, they've mentioned this the Greendale, the city that Sabrina lives in, but like I'm super excited for that because that means that we get some magic in this universe, which I think is like the one thing.
Ho ho ho! It's magic.
Exactly. Like I feel like they've like subtly teased it, and if my calculations are correct, all of this, by the time this episode airs, it'll all be we'll know what's going on, but or maybe not. Maybe it'll be like the last thing that we see in the episode, and we got to wait for season 2. But like, I hope that they just go like the route of like Afterlife or Afterlife with Archie, yeah, and it just gets like weird.
Or Archie vs. Predator.
Yeah. Oh man,
Alex the Campi.
Have her write an episode.
Oh hell yeah.
I'd be fine with that. But like they early on in the series they teased. I can never remember his name. The twin brother that died at the beginning. The Laura Palmer of this show. Jason Blossom. Someone had a bad dream where he was a zombie, and like I hope that like that's how Sabrina gets roped into the show. Like they just find out that she's a witch, and they're like, here, use your magic to resurrect Jason, and then he just fucking turns into a zombie, and then it's,
and then they wake up in Mega City
and
1.
then it's Archie zombies with Judge Dredd and Predator and Batman
And the Punisher. And President Barack Obama.
And Hackslash.
Yes.
Because Hackslash also had the Archie.
And Kiss.
Yeah, because they met Kiss.
The Ramones.
And George Takei.
Yeah.
They already have Kevin Kelly. So they Keller. God, I'm the one that watches the show. I should know these names.
Here's the crazy thing. I read more Archie books than I read DC books now.
There you go. I mean, we are in bed with Archie.
We're on their press list.
That's more than we are with DC.
Yes.
And also, In Bed with Archie sounds like a great
podcast.
Yeah.
Or Archie title.
Oh.
Come on, guys, branch into the adult market.
You're dipping your foot in with the Afterlife and Predator,
Riverdale.
Yeah, just dive. There's plenty of sex going on in Riverdale. That one teacher, she was in bed with Archie. It's fine. You find out about it in like episode 2 or 3. So
Miss
not
Gundy.
What?
Miss Gundy.
Yeah, she's young in the show.
Okay.
She's not old woman Gundy.
Cool. Old woman Gundy.
We went 150 episodes to have her name dropped.
Yeah, in song.
Yeah.
Man, 150. So thanks again, guys, for listening. Obviously, we've been doing this for almost 3 years to the
Jesus Christ.
to the day.
I'm announcing my fucking resignation right now.
Okay, fair enough.
See you in another 3 years.
Yeah, it's been a good
I'll
good
show
run.
up at 200. I'm fucking off this show.
Good God, 200. When would that be? That'd be early next year?
Yeah, almost another year from now. Because 50.
52. Yeah.
And we're a weekly, so.
Yeah. Damn.
Maybe we should take a week off.
I always think about it.
Yeah.
I always think about it.
Zach would still listen.
I take a week off even when we're recording. Those are just the lesser episodes.
Yeah. We're kind of ahead on interviews, maybe.
The rest of my week is off. So, this is the only time that I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you guys have noticed because I'm always like, who are we interviewing today?
Yeah.
Who did we just interview?
Yeah.
I'm just here to press record and make sure everything works.
We have interviews recorded through the end of May.
Boom.
Tight.
Get it back to the time. Anyway, well, thanks again for listening for 150 weeks.
Fuck.
And all our sides.
Fuck does this? Fuck listens to us.
What a bunch of fucking wackos.
What a bunch of fucking wackadoos. Oh God. Seek help.
Yeah. Break glass. But what you should do to seek help?
Ooh.
You should pick up Mayday, available in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, May 24th, and on Comixology. Thanks again to Alex DeCampi for coming back.
Yes.
And Tony Parker for coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and thanks again for listening again.
For real.
For almost 52, so it's almost 3 years.
Yeah.
It'll be 3 years soon. Shit.
Jay Leno and David Letterman are still in the air when we started.
Fuck. You're right. Oh.
And they're both dead.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, that's been a fun ride, but that's how, check out.
Yeah, that's all she wrote. Yeah. Well, thanks again. It's been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake. Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
Wilmer! This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.